So we'll just welcome to In Real Time. I'm your host, Hunter. And with me today is a good friend of mine, youth pastor out of Greencastle, Pennsylvania, Josh Lance. Josh, how you
Hello,
doing?
hello.
Yeah.
I'm doing good.
So, Josh, I know a lot about you, but the three people that listen to this don't know anything about you. So, give us a little intro to who you are and what you're about.
Oh man, okay. So my name's Josh Lance. I'm from Greencastle, Pennsylvania, as you said. I'm the youth pastor at Otterbein UB Church, which is in as we say UB-dom.
Yeah.
One of I don't know 17 UB churches here in the Pennsylvania, South Central Pennsylvania area.
Yeah.
Um, I'm married with 3 kids. My son is Zion. He's 13. My daughter Saffron is going to be 11 here in a few weeks, and my youngest daughter Evie, who is has all kinds of medical stuff going on. She's 8 years old, which is a miracle. So
Yeah.
she wasn't supposed to make it out of the delivery room. So
All right.
every year is another miracle with her. So
Yeah. That's awesome. So, how long have you been in? Like, what's your ministry career looked like?
So I was a part-time youth pastor at a church in Camp Hill. I was actually my grandparents' church for about 7 years, and I just celebrated 10 years here at Otterbein.
Oh.
So 17 full years, and I grew up in the church, although I would not say that I was a believer until after high school. But I had been involved in youth ministry stuff pretty much since 2004. 2003, 2004, right when I graduated. I was youth leader in the youth group I was in, and I was involved in other youth ministry-esque activities as a leader and a speaker. And so I've been in for a long time.
So so you said you grew up in church, but you weren't always a believer. Share a little bit about how you went from churchgoer to, okay, now I'm all in. I believe this stuff.
Oh yeah, this is a great story. So, so yeah, I like I said, I grew up in church. My dad was actually my parents worked at a youth ministry organization called Youth for Christ in the Harrisburg area. So I had been around church stuff my entire life. He was technically, I think he would have been a missionary at that point. And then I forget what year was, but he eventually left that and became the youth pastor at the church that we were attending. So, again, I had been in church all of my life. I knew the right things to say. I knew the right things to believe, but my heart was never really in it. I never surrendered myself to Jesus. And so when I got into high school, I felt a call into ministry. And I think obviously it was the Lord prodding me, because here I am in ministry. But for the first couple of years in high school, I thought, yeah, this is the direction I want to go. But my heart was very far away from God. As Ephesians 2 says, I identify with Ephesians chapter 2, verses 1 through 10, hardcore. I was dead in my sin and just was living a life of, Wednesday, Sunday, I'd go to church and I would say all the right things. I would know the lingo and the things to do to make everyone think I was some great pastor's kid, some great Christian.
Right.
But I was, like I said, I was dead in my sin. And then about senior year of high school, I thought, I don't want to get into ministry. I want to do something that makes money.
Right.
And I was kind of into music.
You don't make money and you're rolling in it right now? Weird.
I actually was just at a conference back in May, and one of the speakers, he was like, listen, if you got into the ministry to make money, you are stupid. Like, he just came right out and said it. I was like, this guy is great, and he's telling the truth. So no, the Lord provides for our needs, but no, I am not rolling in the dough.
Yeah, that's a common theme. I actually, when I got into ministry, it was just like summer camp. I was in high school, working at Wendy's, and I hated my job at Wendy's.
Mm,
And I joked, like my mom in her infinite wisdom said, you can't quit your job at Wendy's till you have something else lined up. So I when I got the interview at the summer camp, she said, okay, fine, you have an interview, you can put your 2 weeks in. And I quit because I was going to be making like double the amount at camp that I was at Wendy's. So I did leave a job. I got into ministry for the money at
nice.
first, but
And then quickly found out, oh,
and
that's not a good idea.
and then very quickly realized that okay, there should probably be a calling here. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, no, it's fine. So, the stupid part of this is when I was a senior, I was like, I really want to be a rock star.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, in the, my Christianese, I thought, well, I'll do it in a Christian context and be, in a Christian rock band and whatnot. And
Yeah.
that was very, very dumb to say the least. But the thing is that I was extremely arrogant. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had thoughts literally of, when I get this thing rolling, like guys like Skillet, they're going to be opening for me. Like I swear that is the thoughts that went through my mind. Like
Well, the irony is John Cooper is actually in our waiting room. So John,
bring him in. Let's oh man. So, the other half of this coin is that I was also in a relationship that I definitely should not have been. I was dating a girl that was just horrible for me, and I looking back, I can see and feel God's pull on my life, and I just kept denying him.
Mhm.
And so then it like, to make a long story short, about 6 months after I graduated high school, I really came to the end of myself and realized that I have been doing life my way. Like I have basically two choices. I can continue to do life my way, which up to that point had really sucked.
Mhm.
Or I could surrender myself to Jesus, which I know is the truth, which I know is what I should do, and give myself over to him and live my life the way he says I should. And so the verse in the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus says, if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off. If your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out. And I don't necessarily take that literally, but this is a glass eye right here. But no, I'm kidding. No, but
Oh,
no, I didn't take that literally. But I took that. That verse came to mind, and
yeah,
it had been like a long time since I had read the Bible myself. So I know that was the Holy Spirit reminding me of a verse,
right.
that verse that I heard in Sunday school or whatever long ago.
Yeah.
But I thought, I was like, okay, Lord, you're right. I need to cut out and cut off everything that's pulling me away from you. So I ended that terrible relationship. I ended a lot of friendships with people that were just basically dragging me to hell.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, Lord, I'm all yours. I'm all in. And that night I surrendered myself to him, and it has, my life's never been the same.
Yeah.
I truly believe that night, and I don't remember the date or anything. I kind of wish I did, but I don't remember the date. I know it was, well, it was 6 months after I had, oh, no. It was early 2004.
Okay.
It was right after, I graduated in 03, and it was like just after, like the new year. So it was early 2004, somewhere in January.
Yeah.
But I truly believe that night, like the Lord saved me, and he
Mhm.
called me out of the deadness of my sin, and made, as Ephesians 2 says, made me alive in Christ.
Yeah.
And it was a couple weeks later that I met the girl that would become my wife. I felt a call into, like a solid call into ministry. And I knew, like, at least for the youth ministry portion of my life, I knew that my mission and my calling would be to tell this story, that, we as people have two choices. We can either do life our way or we can do it God's way.
Mhm.
And, ultimately doing it our way stinks. It really sucks. And sometimes we have to come to that place where, we realize that.
Right.
But yeah, that's so, I don't remember. I don't know timelines or whatever, but in 2007, then I got my first job, the part-time job at my grandparents' church.
Right.
And then in 2013, I came here to Otterbein. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I love hearing. I mean, there's something about an origin story. Like as silly as that sounds, but I love hearing stories of what God has done. And I mean, the whole purpose of this podcast is to celebrate God's faithfulness in real time. Um, so, as you reminisce, as you reflect, what are maybe some highlights or some big moments where you were just acutely aware of God being faithfulness, or even as we talk about it, like, oh yeah, that was wholeheartedly God being faithful in the moment.
So when I was right around October of 2012, I felt the Lord leading me, like saying to me, to do this youth ministry thing full time.
Mm-hmm.
Up to that point, it was just part time, and I had a job in the government, which was fun to say the least.
You want to talk about people that make money?
They make other people's money.
Yeah.
But it was kind of weird because I'd never felt or like understood, like it was just this undeniable sense, and I hate to use the word feeling, but maybe a feeling of this undeniable, just like thing that was invading my thought process.
Yeah.
That I really want to be doing this full time. And so I started applying to churches all over the country. And I had about 4 churches that I was in serious talks with. Otterbein was one. There was one in Indiana. There was one in Michigan. And then there was one in Arkansas. And I had interviewed with all of them. And my wife and I were like, we don't know where the Lord is. Like, it could go anywhere. So I was just like, Father, just, make it clear where we should go. And within a week, 2 of the churches contacted me and said, hey, we're going a different direction. And then I forget what it was, but something happened with the church in Michigan that was just like, this would not be a good idea to go there. And so it was like extremely clear that Otterbein Greencastle is where the Lord was calling me.
Yeah.
And even just the time leading up to when we moved down here, and then things that fell into place, like we could see God's faithfulness. You talk about it in real time. We could see God's faithfulness just rolling out in real time as we were. I mean, because moving a family and everything is difficult. Starting in a new place where we have no idea, we don't know where things are. We don't know,
right.
We're away from home essentially.
Yeah.
But we could see God just moving in our lives, and even fast forward a few years, we had our youngest daughter, Evelyn, and she was born with a lot of complications, and we've seen God's faithfulness over and over and over in her life. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we will, and I'm not saying this to sound like God is a genie, but there have been stuff where it's like, okay, the doctors are seeing this thing on this scan or whatever, and it could go either way. And so we just start praying, Lord, make it fall in our favor. And most of the time it does, but at those times where it didn't, there was still like this little ray of, okay, well, it's this, what seems to be this terrible thing, but actually it turns out that this is pointing out another problem,
Mm-hmm.
or this is pointing to another thing that is ultimately for her good. Ultimately, to help the doctors deal with these other three things that they didn't even
Yeah.
see before. And so even in the midst of, and we get wrecked when it's like we get news that isn't favorable, what we think is favorable.
Right.
But then we look back and we're like, oh, wow, this, her getting sick or her having this complication actually, brought a spotlight to this other thing that ultimately helps her out.
Right.
And I mean, we've seen God heal her. It's funny because it's like with her condition, um, just getting the common cold can be a big problem. And with her condition, we've seen others who it's like they get, what they call the rhinovirus, which is just the common cold, but it's a really cool name.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, but she'll get a cold, and we will be able to treat her, like keep her at home instead of having to take her into the hospital and get
Right.
treatment and everything. And it's like, God is so good to us, even in those little, and they're, in the grand scheme of things, they're very little. But he just in those little things, he has been so good.
Yeah.
And we praise him all the time.
Hmm. That's awesome. So that's just incredible. You're a youth pastor. I'm a youth pastor. I think we would be doing everybody who just cares about the nuts and bolts of youth ministry a massive disservice if we didn't tackle a big question. Um,
Mm.
and I don't know if you've ever come across this, but there are times where, most of the time, jokingly, most of the time out of humor, poking fun, but I'll get the question, what do you even do here? So what I want to talk a little bit about today is youth ministry even necessary? Like,
Mm.
why do we have a job? Should we have a job? Is what we do something someone else should be doing? Kind of a broad, is youth ministry necessary? So, what are your initial thoughts?
Well, I think that every demographic in the church should have some person, an elder or a deacon, whatever term,
Mhm.
pastor you want to use, um, that engages them in their people group, but to engage them, but to do it in a way that engages them in the larger church, the larger context of the church.
Mhm.
Um, Specifically youth ministry, I just, it's really great that we're having this conversation because just the other day, we had an event here that we call, not here, but we had an event that we call River Day, which is an introduction for 5th to 9th graders. Now, our youth ministry starts at seventh grade.
Oh, all right.
Um, I know some start in 6th grade. I
Yeah.
actually tried to switch that up a few years ago, and I lost that battle, which is fine. Because then my son went into 6th grade, and I was like, oh yeah, no, you should not be in
Yeah.
youth group yet.
Do you go 7 through 12 then all
Yeah.
together? All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. All together. And the way that we have done it is we try and encourage our older students to take on a younger student who's coming in and just
Mhm.
be their friend, be their buddy, you know, and it organically most of the time turns into a mentor relationship. Um,
Yeah.
but anyway, so we have this event to introduce the 5th graders, and then they are able to come in their 5th grade year, their 6th grade. This is all during the summer. 5th grade, 6th grade,
Mhm.
7th grade. So they get this big introduction to youth group when they can finally come in 7th grade. They're already somewhat familiar. And there's a guy in our church who owns a spot on the Potomac River. He has like a river house. It's like a big camper with a big deck, and we play games, and he has a boat we take out on the river, and we get on tubes, and he drives really fast and in circles and all kinds, and throws students off tubes. It's really
Yeah.
fun. But we have a devotion during that time, and I spoke the other day when we did this on Ecclesiastes 3 and and chapter 12. And, chapter 3 says there's a time for everything. And that was kind of the point that I wanted to make with them, is that this time of their life is, they have such an advantage if they take advantage of it, that this time in their life, if they begin to dig into their relationship with the Lord, by the time they get to, my age, when they're older, they will have had all of these years stacked up in relationship with Jesus, rather than, ignoring it. Then when you get to an adult and you realize, oh, I should be following Christ or whatever,
Yeah.
there's all this time that has passed. And even in chapter 12, it says, in the days of your youth, remember your Creator. And the end of the matter is to love God, to follow after him. I'm of course giving the Josh Lance paraphrase here.
Yeah.
But it's our job as youth pastors, I think, is so important in encouraging and scattering planting seeds in the lives of these students, that, hey, you have an opportunity to follow Christ now. You don't have to be an old guy or an old girl, old woman, looking back saying, oh, I should have followed Jesus. Like, you have an opportunity to do it now.
Yeah.
And I realize, like, one of the things that and I'm sure that you can relate to this, one of the things that we compete with all the time is sports and band and all these school activities. And they're great. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you are involved in those while neglecting, youth group and your relationship with Jesus, then it's quite detrimental.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I mean,
we have
go ahead.
Yeah, we'll have an episode in a couple weeks with a guy talking about that very same thing, specifically with sports. But how do you balance sports and faith? And because it's a big cultural thing right now that we see in youth ministry, where we are competing with a lot of different things. And one of my ministry philosophy pillars is, like, I'm not going to compete with that.
Right.
So because of that, I'll do fewer things, and I'll stay away from, we don't do anything during spring break because I want that to be family time. We limit the number of activities, especially events we do during the school year, because there's so much happening during the school year. And then during the summer, we don't do our youth group gathering, but we ramp up special events and the fun activities that we ramp down during the school year, because there's more time. So just trying not to have a heartbeat of I'm competing with all this stuff, because that just leads to discouragement when they choose something else over your stuff.
Yeah. It's definitely a balance that you have to strike.
Mm-hmm.
And, knowing the culture of your area and how, things kind of operate is important.
Well, it's so much different from, even within wherever your city or town or village or whatever is, church culture, youth ministry culture changes drastically. We do youth group on Sunday nights, and a lot of churches, the majority maybe, go Wednesday nights.
Mm-hmm.
Wednesday night could not work in our context because of sports and school, all this stuff. It just, for 30 years, 40 years, we've done Sunday nights, and it's worked. And it's a part of our community. All the other churches, most of them do Sunday nights. So that's kind of been kept holy. Granted, we're in the sticks, so we're a little slower to pick up on some of those cultural trends, like abandoning Sabbath. But we'll get there. But yeah, so what do you think? Where do you see youth ministry going? Let's try and get creative a little bit. How is it going to change in the next 5 to 10 years, do you think? What are some changes you think will take place?
Well, it's funny because I think about just the changes that we've seen already. We are a far cry from my days in youth group when we were playing games like Honey, If You Love Me.
Dude, I talk about that all the time. Dude, there are games we played that I would get fired.
Yeah, exactly.
If I even attempted. And Honey, If You Love Me is one of them. That's
I hated that game
I did
mostly because
too.
I was terrible at it, and
Yeah.
I just would make me, awkward teenage guy
Yep.
trying to play it cool, and then some girl. This is an awkward conversation, but then some girl sits on your lap, and you just like I just would laugh just to get
Right.
like I in well anyway.
If anyone is like listening to this isn't familiar with church youth group culture in the late '90s to the aughts, like they're gonna be like, "What is going on in churches, man?"
What are they talking? Yeah,
You,
seriously.
especially in the cultural lens of today, like
Yeah,
that's just a wild game that was played.
yeah. So like I said, we've seen a lot of changes. I think one of the things that we have to kind of focus on is what we're doing right here. The way the world is going is content creation,
Mm-hmm.
and putting things out there that are actually worthwhile, conversations that are worthwhile. You can
Yeah.
scroll on TikTok and find tons of content that's just basically like what we're doing here. People sitting around with microphones in front of their faces, doing
Yeah.
a podcast. And I never thought personally, I mean, I love podcasting. I'm a podcaster myself. I never thought that it would be like videoing, just sitting around a table, like
Yeah.
talking would be considered good content. That's why
Right.
most of my stuff is just audio, because I'm like, nobody wants to watch you just sit there. Well,
Yeah.
apparently they do.
They
Because it's
do.
everywhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think just youth pastors, our smartphones, um, the ability we have to reach our students and beyond
Mm-hmm.
is incredible. To just put the camera, and I'm talking to myself here, just put the camera in front of your face and do a quick 3 minute, 3 minute devotional.
Yeah.
Now it takes some time in preparation because 2 minutes goes by fast. So you want to have something, of quality to say,
Right.
but I think content creation is a big part of it. But then to the other side of that coin is I think we need to get way more relational,
Yeah.
because there can be this disconnect. And I've found with my students that, I can create all the content that I want, and it could be high quality, great stuff. But if I'm not investing in their lives and like showing them on a Wednesday or Sunday or
Mm-hmm.
whenever we're together, that I love you and I'm invested in your life and what's going on in your life. If I'm not communicating that and showing them, they won't watch a thing,
Yeah.
because then I'm just another person on their feed
Yep.
who doesn't care about them, who doesn't know them, who's, just talking at them.
Yeah.
But, and I think again, like seeing where we've come from, this is one of those really important things that being relational, having youth leaders who are, not just myself, but having youth leaders who are relational, who will go to these events, sporting events and stuff that the kids have going on. And you don't have to be at every single one.
Right.
But I make it a point to, because I have a family and the number of students I have, I make a commitment to them and to myself that I will be at least one of their sporting events.
Yeah.
And if I can make it to 2 or 3, I definitely will. But with my life, raising kids and everything, it usually turns out that I am only able to go to one thing for each student. So
Right.
that's still 15 to 30
Right.
events in a season.
Yeah.
But even just being there and having, and like just it being known that you're there is
Yeah.
a huge thing in building relationship. And then of course, Wednesday night when we see each other or whatever at youth group, I can be like, hey, you played a great game, or I saw the move you did, or when you were in, that was great that you were in the play, and whatever
Yeah.
it is. So yeah, like content creation I think is big. Relationship is really big. And I think one other thing is, talking about youth leaders, having in terms of the greater life of the church, having youth leaders who span the generations,
Mm-hmm.
I think is important. The research is really kind of crystal clear on this, that generational youth um, generational youth ministry is important.
Yeah.
Having youth leaders who are grandparents, having youth leaders who are young adults, having youth leaders who are parents,
Yeah.
not necessarily their parents, but um, having youth leaders from all walks of life be able to come in and speak into the lives of these students is huge, and especially huge in getting them involved outside of youth group into the greater life of the church, because that's the goal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Once they leave youth group,
It should be.
it should be, yeah. Not necessarily stay at our church, because, you know, if you
Right.
go off to college, but to make Christ be such a foundational and important part of their lives,
Yeah.
that when they leave home, the first thing they do is, I need to find a church, because it's
Yeah.
that important to me.
So, what do you say to? This is a two-part question. First,
Mhm.
to parents in the church who say, "Well, I'm not going to help out because I don't want to hinder my kid, or it be weird or awkward for them." So that's one. And then the we'll say elder saints, the older folks, the senior saints. There we go, who say things like, "Oh, I really value kids. I really value youth ministry, but I just can't keep up." Maybe something
Mhm.
like the
Mhm.
spirit's willing, but the body's weak. So,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on those two things?
Okay, so I'll do the second part first,
All right.
because I have a funny story. So we have about an hour from us, there's a place called Hershey Park.
Mm-hmm.
They claim to be the sweetest place on earth, because
Uh,
it's where Hershey's chocolate, right? So we took the youth group. I was 29 years old.
Mhm.
Took the youth group, and I kept up with them all day. I mean, roller coaster after roller coaster. I felt great. It was awesome. I had a youth leader who was 3 years older than me. His name was Greg. He was what, 30,
Shout out to
32?
Greg.
Shout out to Greg. He's 32.
Yeah.
About halfway, he was like, "Oh man, I'm so excited. We're going to go on all these coasters and everything." And I was, we were hanging out together with students. About halfway through the day, he was like, "Dude, I don't feel so good." I was like, "What's going on?" He's like, I'm so tired, and like, I feel a little nauseous." He's like, so we're getting ready to get on another roller coaster, and he's like, I'm just going to sit this one out. And we're like, okay. So he goes and sits on a park bench. When we get on the roller coaster, we can see him, like, as we're sitting there ready to take off, we can see him on this park bench, and the dude is literally slumped over asleep on this park bench.
Oh, poor
Right.
Greg.
And so we came off, and I'm like, "Dude, we saw you sleeping." He's like, "Oh man, I sat down and like immediately fell asleep." He's like, "And I've been asleep the whole time till you guys came up and woke me up."
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh my gosh." Well, I was surprised that no one else like went over to him and was like, "Sir, are you okay?" Because
Yeah.
the way he
Like
was
a
slumped,
toast.
he kind of looked like he died, but
Yeah.
but maybe he was snoring, so everyone knew he was
Yeah.
still breathing. But anyway, so then the next year I turned 30, and we went to same place, Hershey Park. And I kid you not, halfway through the day, I felt terrible.
Awesome.
And I was like, and Greg was there, and I'm like, and that year he was like, "Dude, I'm gonna take it easy this year." So halfway through the day, I'm like going on all these coasters and pushing myself, and
Yeah.
then I started feeling terrible. I'm like, "Greg, I don't know what's going on." He's like, "Dude, you're 30 years old. Like, that's what's going on."
No. See,
And
this was I turned 30 in October. So this is very scary. So thanks for that.
Yeah. So I was like, "That is not cool. That's not fair. Like,
Yeah.
what? I'm
Yeah,
only
right.
30. But so every time we go to a park now, I take this is the secret, Hunter. I take
I'll write this down.
Dramamine the night before,
Mhm.
and I feel fine the rest of the day. I feel fine the whole day.
All
But
right.
on the ride home, whoever's sitting in, like, I'm usually driving, whoever's sitting in the passenger seat of the van that we have,
Mhm.
I'm like, "You have to talk to me the whole way home, or I'm gonna fall asleep."
Yeah.
But anyway, so all that to say, I totally understand with the older generation feeling and thinking, I just can't keep up.
Do you know
You
how
know what?
insulted they are that you just said 30 is old?
Well, yeah, no. 30, 30 is not old, but you start to feel not young at
Yeah,
30.
yeah, that's fair.
But it's totally okay, and it's okay to show the students, hey, this is a part of life. And so I would say get involved in the places where you can, you
Mhm.
know Sunday nights, Wednesday nights, the small groups. you know you're not doing any strenuous activities. You can come and hang out and just invest in the lives of students.
Yeah,
And then those times when they're doing crazy things, just let them go and do crazy things. And the youth leaders who are younger, they'll go and get involved, or the ones that are drugged up on Dramamine, they'll go and get involved.
yeah,
um the point is that having these older youth leaders invest in the lives of students, it shows the students, I think, on a psychological level, that it brings about the unity of the church, that oneness in the body of Christ, rather than, oh, we're the youth group over here, we're the older people over here. And
right.
because then when the student gets to that point where they graduate and then go into the adult class, it's like an awkward thing,
Yeah,
because they don't know any of the adults. But if you have adults being involved, and also I think getting students involved on Sunday morning in the various ministries of the church, whether it's the greeting, whether it's like we do we get coffee and donuts from Dunkin' Donuts here in town, and the students serve it, and so they interact with the people, the older people of the church,
yeah,
that whole whatever 15-20 minutes that they're doing that. And that's a
that's
great
awesome.
a great thing.
Yeah,
um with the parents, I would say, this is something that's changed in youth ministry for a long time. In fact, my brother's a youth pastor in Lancaster. I was having a conversation with him the other day, and he said when he was in school, he went to Eastern University for
hey, me
youth
too.
ministry.
Shout out to Golden
Uh,
Eagles.
yeah. So he said that one of the things that he learned was that parents are the enemy.
Yeah, dude.
Did they still
Well,
teach that?
oh man, I finished. Yeah, it wasn't explicitly taught. So I just went through the program the last 4 years and
Okay.
graduated
Okay.
last spring. It wasn't explicitly taught, but it was very much implied
Hmm.
that when you start to do this, your biggest obstacle is going to be the parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And I nothing against Eastern. I don't think that's right.
I agree.
I don't think that's in
They need
fact.
to be the parents need to be your biggest cheerleaders, I think,
Yeah.
and your
Yeah.
biggest co-laborers.
Yeah. Yeah. Because essentially you have access to students for like an hour and a half,
Mm-hmm.
once or twice a week. So 3 hours total a week. And then if you add time if you go in to their event or whatever, but you're
Right.
not and that's not really direct access, but the parents are with them all the time. So one of the things that I've started to really encourage parents with is to do this old Puritan practice called family worship, where
Mm-hmm.
before students go to bed, you take 30 minutes and you just read the Bible together. You don't have to be a Bible scholar to just pick up and read Psalm 121 and then just say, hey, what are your thoughts on this? If you're comfortable as a family singing, sing a hymn together. And one of the things that I've really gotten into is the idea of catechism.
Mm-hmm.
I do with my kids. I'm taking them through the Westminster Catechism. Now, we're not Presbyterian or whatever per se, but it's a great learning format, because it's basically just questions and answers.
Yeah.
So like the first question is, what is the chief end of man? And then they give you the answer. The chief end of man is to love God and to love and glorify God and enjoy him forever. And then they give the little booklet I have, and you can look it up online too. It's,
Yeah.
just type it in and you can get a PDF copy. But the copy I have has the Bible verses where they get that. And you don't have to use that. You can use, whatever denomination you're in.
Yeah.
They'll have a confession. You can even just get the Nicene Creed and
Yeah.
just go through that. We believe in one God, the Father Almighty. But parents ultimately are the spiritual heroes of their students, in their students' faith journey. And so it's very important for them to, as you said, to partner with them.
Mm-hmm.
I try and send something out. Now I don't do it. I've gone to like once a month,
Mm-hmm.
try and send them something that's like, hey, here's, some things that are going on this month, and then here's a resource for you. And it's, usually just an article, just something to think about. I try and keep it really short because I know, people's time is precious.
Yeah.
So I don't want to send them like a whole novel of stuff, but something real short that's like, hey, just something to think about, and it's usually something that's around parenting.
Yeah.
But it's important, I think, in for youth ministry to have longevity. It's important for youth pastors to join with to partner with parents.
Yeah.
And to really come alongside them and say, how can I support you?
Yeah.
And not to look at them as, the enemy.
I've frustrated some parents when I say this, but it's true. I mean, they're the primary spiritual influence in their kids' lives.
Yeah.
Good, bad, or otherwise. That's the truth. Their friends are influential. Sure. The music they're listening to, yes. The TikTok people they follow, yeah. Their youth pastor, yeah. All influences. Some may be spiritual influence, some not, but the parents will remain. And then you look at all of the data pointing to the dad's relationship with the church, with God, and how that influences the kids, and how the mom influences their primary. Doesn't matter how many times. Now, certainly church attendance and plugging into youth ministry and getting involved at a participatory level makes an impact.
Mm-hmm.
But if the parents aren't in it, you're swimming upstream.
Yeah, so, definitely.
Sweet. That was really good conversation. There was a lot of really good gold nuggets. You're a genius. You're wise way beyond your years. And you're still quite young. So
thank you.
You may not be able to go to Hershey Park for a whole day without Dramamine, but you got it. You got it. So thanks for hanging out with me for a little bit. Really excited to stay in touch and all the ministry things. What are some? So you said you have a podcast.
Yeah.
Where can people find you at? That sort of thing.
So we're on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and the podcast is called Tribal Council Radio. And
I've heard it before.
You've been on it. There is an episode with you on it. Yeah, you and Byron. Yeah. Yeah. It's mostly it's like I said, it's mostly audio.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few things on YouTube, but if you go to Apple Podcasts and search it, it should come up. The platform that we use is Buzzsprout. Mm-hmm. So it's tribalcouncilradio.buzzsprout.com, and you'll find the direct page there as well.
Nice. Shout out to Buzzsprout. Even though
you can also
I don't use them anymore.
Well, actually, this Riverside thing we're using, I might have to look into this because this is pretty dope.
Yeah, shout out.
I like it. Yeah. You can also you can find me on Instagram. I post most of my stuff on Instagram under not Josh Lance is my handle.
That just tells you. I can guess based off your Instagram or social media handle about when you got into social media, and if it was not, and then with your real name, that's so funny. That's awesome. Sweet. Well, we're gonna call this episode to a close. So cool. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks for having me.
All right. And I got to figure out how to, where's my, and stop recording.